Hi, I'm Julia Kirby of Harvard Business Review. Today in the studio, really happy to have Marcus Buckingham. If that's a name that's familiar to you, it's probably because of a best-selling book he wrote in 1999, First Break All the Rules, and he's written several books since. The most recent one is called Standout 2.0. All these books have pursued this groundbreaking idea that individuals perform best when they are going with their strengths as opposed to trying to shore up their weaknesses. And organizations perform best when their managers help their people do that. Marcus, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So a lot of your early work was helping people discover their own strengths, and you kind of had a codification of different types of strengths. And a lot of it was self-diagnosis for me to figure out, well, what is that strength that I should be doubling down on? Now it seems like you're saying it's not really enough to just know your strengths.
Well, on one level, yes, certainly my work, while I was with Don Clifton at Gallup, we designed something called Strength Finder, which is clearly, this is 2001, 2002. It was, as you said, a codification to help an individual name and own and affirm their strengths. There were personality tests, but there wasn't really a credible list of strengths that you could possess and then a way to measure those. So that's what Strength Finder was. And then in a book called Go Put Your Strengths to Work, I took that one step further to say, it's not just about labels, it's about your strengths are what strengthen you, your weaknesses are what weaken you. Weirdly, sometimes you're actually quite good at some things that weaken you, so your strengths aren't what you're good at, because of this weird idea that you actually can be quite good at some things that drain you. Well, what do you call that? You wouldn't call that a strength. So that led into, well, if your strengths are what strengthen you, then of course you're the best judge of your strengths. You know what invigorates you, what draws you in. So in that book was trying to say to individuals, hey, let's say once you've taken something like Strength Finder, or Myers-Briggs or Insights or anything else which is about affirming you, then what can you do to use the raw material of your regular life to inform, for you, what are the specific activities that strengthen you? That's kind of where I got to. And then with Standout, it became more, at least the first version of Standout was more about what's the, okay, well, identification's one thing, but really the challenge for all of us is to continue to grow and develop those particular patterns or strengths or traits intelligently. And that happens, that isn't a one-off event. And one of the biggest frustrations I always have, if you take something like Strength Finder, people take it, they read it, they go, that's interesting, and they shove it in a drawer. And there's nothing more frustrating, as you probably know, is you have people read something and then they don't, it doesn't become a useful way in which they engage with their colleagues in the world. And that's a shame, because the whole point of this strength thing for individuals is it should enable you to live a more productive and more fulfilled working and indeed whole life. So the point initially with Standout was, you know what, let's give you an ongoing set of touch points, an ongoing set of ideas and techniques. Let's drip content to you over time so that you can begin to think every week, how can I apply my best self more effectively, more intelligently?
Because it does seem like we all kind of obsess ourselves about our weaknesses. It isn't only our organization that's always trying to fit square pegs into round holes, but we always focus on those. So you're saying we need a way to refocus us constantly on this task of honing the strength.
Well, as individuals, yes. I mean, we can talk about organizations in a second, but as individuals, you know, if you know someone's fear, you'll know their need. And we're frightened of our weaknesses. So we need to fix them. I mean, that's the way so much of life goes. I mean, if you have a kid and the kid comes home with an F, you are frightened of the F, you need to fix the F as a parent. And that starts early with you in kindergarten as a kindergartner, and then it continues with you, you're reinforcing that as a parent 30 years later. So you're right, we go through our life preoccupied with the things that could catch us out, derail us. Not least because our boss is going to come and tell us about them, ad infinitum. And so we move ourselves from kindergarten, where there's the beginnings of a flowering of an understanding that I'm different from everybody else, and how cool is that? And then throughout school and into work, we then crush that. We deliberately, systematically crush that by saying, with tremendously good intentions, saying, Julia, it doesn't really matter what your strengths are. I mean, jolly well done for having some. But if you want to grow, you need to figure out where your areas of opportunity are, your areas for development are, and then you need to work on those. And now we overlay it with things like, and lovely words, like you need to have a growth mindset, Julia. You need to have a growth mindset. You aren't unique in any way, really. You're just a blank canvas. You can be whatever you want to be. So if you get good at something, we're not going to say it's because you have some natural innate strengths. We're going to say it's because you worked really hard. And so we create this world in which saying to someone, you can grow into anything you want to be, becomes, which seems so lovely for me to say to you, because it just sounds so enabling. But actually, it's incredibly destructive, because it says you're not anyone. There's nothing enduringly unique about you. Don't interrogate yourself. Don't investigate yourself. Don't discover what's unique about you, because there's nothing there. Really, what you should do is just figure out where your performance is low. We'll call that area for development, and then you'll fix that. In fact, you'll keep putting it year upon year into your IDPs, your individual development plans. And we'll tell you that if you want to get promoted, you have to have these requisite level of competency on these 17 competencies that we've arbitrarily defined for you. And the whole thing becomes this incredibly pathological, remedial system that denies individuality. And we haven't done this accidentally. We have systematized it.
So that's been the recent focus of your work, is to take that strengths-based foundation and build it out into a real and rigorous performance management platform, I guess.
Yes, well, frankly, it started on one level. It started because, you either write things because you think they're interesting, or you write them because you want to make some change happen. And I'm of the latter variety. I flatter myself to believe that I'm actually doing something practically useful. And if you think that, then at some point you go, wait a minute, the ideas are losing out to the forms. If your ideas are out there, the strengths-based idea, where will a person grow the most? They grow most in their areas of strength, blah, blah, blah. But the forms, the systems, the tools are all 180 degrees built differently from that. So in the form, and the most obvious example is on a scale of good to bad, the good is labeled strengths and the bad is labeled area for development, area of opportunity. So right there in the language is the antithetical idea that your greatest areas of opportunity lie in your weaknesses, not your strengths. I mean, it's right there in the form. And there's a million other examples like that. But if the forms are like that and your ideas are strengths-based, then the forms win. The forms trump the ideas. So at some point you go, well, what do we do? We've built performance management systems by turning to the IT department. And the IT department, good folks and all, but they are the ones that are determining how we lead and manage ourselves and our teams. They're the ones who create the fields. They're the ones who create the relational databases. They're the ones that create these huge human capital management technology platforms. And they're all built in a way that is antithetical to what the best team leaders do. Now, either you can then berate and complain about that, or you can go, well, if this form and system and structure trumps the ideas, then at some point you've got to get in and start you've got to build a different form. You've got to build a different system so that it can be supportive of or add speed and insight to what the best team leaders do anyway. And so in Standout 2.0, what I was trying to do is initially say, first of all, let's build tools for team leaders. I mean, we all know that so goes the team leader, so goes the organization. Every CEO goes, yes, that, when you sort of bring that up. The team leader makes the difference. And yet there are no tools for team leaders. We build tools for organizations. Employee engagement systems, learning management systems, performance management systems. They're all systems for the organization. It's the weirdest thing, Julia, but we don't build tools for the people that create the value in the organization, the team leader. So that, for Standout 2.0, we were thinking, let's build a tool set for the team leader. And the team leader, if you think about it, has 3 questions they want to ask themselves about their teams. What are the strengths of my people? What are they doing today? And how are they feeling today? So it's strengths, activity, engagement. Like that's what I want on my dashboard. So with Standout 2.0, we were like, gosh, can we build for the team leader a really practical way to answer that first question that every team leader has? What the heck are my people capable of? How can I get the best from them? So that was the impetus for all the work that went into Standout 2.0. It was It was, can we serve that audience? Can we serve the team leader?
Are there companies that are already plowing into this new ground of turning their performance management systems into really strengths-based ones?
Well, obviously, we wrote about one company, Deloitte, that just got annoyed with the fact that its performance management system was not getting the best out of its people.
And this was your recent Harvard Business Review piece with Ashley Goodall,
Yes.
who's Chief Learning Officer at Deloitte.
Exactly. Yeah, so Ashley was charged with redoing their performance management system. And we were working on some ideas related to that, and so dove into that. They got going on, gosh, I mean, as the article describes, 2 million hours is a lot of hours to spend generating bad data on people. And Deloitte doesn't have any other product. They've only got people. So for them, it was a mission critical thing to ensure that if we're going to spend all this time and energy, we better be getting the most from our people. And what would a strengths-based way of doing that look like? What would a reliably sourced data-based way be to do that, so that we can ensure that this whole thing is based on good data? So they are one, but there are actually now, there are many organizations that have taken up the challenge of becoming explicitly strengths-based. Facebook would be one, Wells Fargo would be one, Chick-fil-A would be one, Disney would be one, Accenture would be one. You go down through it, there's a lot of organizations who now, at the idea level, go, yeah, I mean, if we're going to make the most of our human capital, then, to quote Peter Drucker, we have to get our strengths together and make our weaknesses irrelevant. He said that about great organizations. But we have to apply that to each individual. We have to get their strengths together and make their weaknesses irrelevant. That's just a more sophisticated way of making the most of human beings. So there's a lot of different organizations grappling with, well, how do we do that?
So as you say, organizations have got the religion on some level about strengths, and but they've been kind of slow to assimilate it with the forms of their management. What do you think is going to, in reality, happen over the next, say, 5-year horizon?
Well, I think we're going to see a reduction in abstraction, and we're going to see a focus on real team leaders working with real people in real time with real work. And as you look at what's driving that trend, the watches, the phones, we're going to see a devolution of power, if you will, to every team leader everywhere, all of whom will have now, with their phones and their watches and so forth, they'll have the power to be able to gather data on a particular person's strengths, what activities they're doing, how engaged they are right now, and then do really interesting, practical, useful analytics, prescriptive analytics on what should I then do with my people to stop them from leaving or to increase their performance or to drive their learning. All of that will be now in the hands of each local team leader. And I think that will be tremendously exciting, both for the team members and the team leaders, and hugely beneficial for the organizations. Because if you can give all that power to team leaders, data, insight, and so forth, then you get that most valuable of all things, you get agility. And right now, we have stasis and stagnation. And what we need, and what organizations need, is agility. And it's a beautiful thing, Julia, where you find a marriage between what team leaders want anyway and what the organization wants. And the organization wants agility. Team leaders want real stuff, real people, real time, dealing with my real problems of getting the most from another real person. So suddenly, right now, I think there's this wonderful marriage. And that is what we're going to see played out over the next 5 years.
Absolutely exciting. Marcus Buckingham, thank you for taking the time to share your thinking with us today. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.